everybody. Welcome back to another conversation of As It Goes. I hope you're having an incredible week. If not, let's turn that around. Today we're talking about letting the pandemic change your life. Welcoming the insights that the pandemic gave each of us in our own lives, the changes that we felt called to make, whatever. We'll get into it. We'll get into why and how we can let the pandemic change our lives for the better. Now, I know from my own personal experiences of trauma that through the difficulty of traumatic events comes ground-shaking opportunity for healing, growth, evolution, and redirection in life. It can be a small redirection, it can be a complete shift, whatever we feel called in those experiences as a result of, and to respond to, again, the insights and changes we became aware of as a result of the trauma. This is something I came to a conclusion on, again, from my own experience. I didn't know it was scientifically known and conceptualized until I recently read an article in the Times, which is linked in the show notes, on the subject. The article details how behavioral scientists know, quote, times of disruption and trauma also create new opportunities for growth and change, end quote. One doctor, Katie Milkman, explains that, quote, we're most inclined to make meaningful changes around temporary landmarks, those points in time that we naturally associate with a new beginning, end quote. And finally, a professor of psychology, Laurie Santos, explains that, in regards to this post-traumatic growth, quote, we can come out stronger and with a bit more meaning in our lives after going through negative events, end quote. In normal, conventional terms, this means that we have a beautiful opportunity here to take what we've learned and noticed and experienced during this pandemic and reshape our lives and live them authentically in our own image. On this subject in particular, I talked about this many moons ago in an episode of As It Goes, Finding the Lessons in 2020. Again, link in the show notes. This is a great place to start reflecting and establishing takeaways from this experience that are kind of from an alternate perspective, again, of making meaning out of negative events. And finding these takeaways that you want to bring with you as the pandemic recedes. The larger point here, and in any traumatic or potentially traumatic experience, is you went through a lot. It was incredibly difficult at times, most of the time, whatever your experience was. Don't let that go to waste. Don't let that be consumed by negativity, by resuming life is normal pre-pandemic. Because chances are there were things about your life that you noticed or will notice as you reflect and even listen to that episode of As It Goes that need to change. I think we all did. Whether it was on larger scale stuff, work, society, justice, inequality, or personally, I need to spend less time on technology. I need to spend more time in nature. I liked living slow, So how can I bring that into my life now? How can I make that my norm, even if it's not the normal pace of everything around me? I think we can all agree that life is hard and society is imperfect. It's up to you to make meaning out of your life, and especially the difficulties in your life. This event, this pandemic, being one of them. That is what is on offer to you, to me, to us. And that is also what is at risk if we don't make changes as the pandemic recedes and as we venture out into the world once more. Because if we resume life as normal and we even noticed things in our lives that we want to do differently, but we fall back into old habits and how we were doing things before, what I'd gather from my own experience that will happen is there will be a felt discomfort between what your mind, body, and soul knows to be true and is calling on you through uncomfortable feelings, anxiety, unease, sadness, disassociation, whatever it may be. We will feel that if we don't respond to those needs accordingly. Again, for example, if I noticed I like living slowly and I learned that through quarantine, and then I resume a fast-paced life, whatever my schedule is, seeing friends every night, going out, doing this, doing whatever whatever it is for you. You know, if I resume that fast-paced life, I will be missing all that I gained through and realized I liked about slow-paced living. So in that case, as I pick back up, as the pandemic recedes, I have to take time and space to acknowledge and ask myself, am I going to participate in this event as a distraction? Have I taken care of myself? Have I spent enough time doing things I love, taking it slowly and everything, and I'm ready to go venture out? It's that kind of thing. As we turn the page and begin a new chapter in each of our lives, it is fully up to us to decide what this next chapter is. There might be things carrying over from old chapters, relationships, jobs, whatever. But think about the story of your life. You're the hero of your story. Have you been owning that role? Or have you been playing a disempowered version of that role? If you have, how can you use this chapter to make that narrative arc and transformation into the hero? What can you try? What can you do? How will the story of your life change if you decide and start making those changes that you noticed during the pandemic that you need in this next chapter? Write those down. Pull out your notebook, write down those questions and sit with them and reflect on them. Perhaps during and or after you listen to the episode on finding the lessons in 2020 to build on that. And it's okay if you don't know how. Remember, we're all just figuring it out as it goes. Conversations help us along the way. I'm figuring out as I go, and you're figuring out as you go. Everyone is figuring it out as they go. The point is, at least I've found and I've really acknowledged within myself, I don't need to know 3 steps down the line, right? I can have an idea of what they might be, but I just need to know, what do I need to do today for myself, for my well-being, for my evolution, so that I treat everyone kindly, so that I spread love and light everywhere I go, and so that I'm taking steps in the direction of my life and not antagonizing my vision for my life, my values, my character. What do I need to do to stay on this path? What is that one step forward? So long as you know what that first step is, which you do, right? In this case, what we're talking about is change. So you know the first step is change. Then you can figure out what the next step is. Which changes? In what order do I want to try to tackle some of these changes? What are top priority changes? What are changes I can put on the back burner until maybe I master a few of these changes, these major changes? And then the next step, brainstorming and implementing these changes into small daily actions in your life, and so on and so forth. It's just one step after the next. Doesn't matter if you trip and fall, we pick ourselves back up and we keep taking steps in the direction of where we authentically want to go. It's never too late. It's never too early. If you're 13 or if you're 93, this is your life. Live it how you want to. Live it to the fullest. Make the most of it. Period. I mean, I hope that is something that we can all take away, right? From this life-altering experience we've all shared of the pandemic. Life is so fragile, and we are so blessed to be experiencing life, to have this human experience. There is no reason to put limits on it. And there is no reason that we should limit what is possible to experience in our lives. Absolutely. Things in society put certain limits on us depending on what identities you were born into, which is completely unjust. And as we navigate those, and as we navigate our vision for our life and the path that we're on, the point is to do it authentically and to make the most of it. You have every right to that. And there is no reason you can't or shouldn't do that. And if you know, right? If you know that you would benefit from making these changes that we're talking about, but you lack the motivation, the mentality, the structure, the discipline, the knowledge, the practices to do so, sign up for our Reself waitlist. We're offering a pre-launch preview of our full mindset workshop, which will empower you by building a strong foundation within, starting at the most important, subtle, fundamental level of your mind. And from there, you can take the steps you need to make these changes. We're changing the most important element, which is our mind, how we think, what we believe. And that's really going to set you up to let the pandemic change your life for the better. That link is in the show notes. And again, the first step here is reflection. You can start with the episode of As It Goes and/or reflect on what you noticed and want to change in your life. You can answer those questions that we talked about earlier. Maybe it's, like I said, maybe it's making more time for fun and play, for rest, for family and friends, for experiences. Maybe it's spending less money on material things like clothes and shoes and more on travel. Maybe it's less time on technology and more time in nature. Maybe it's making time for hobbies and things you're passionate about. And then the next step is brainstorming how you're going to incorporate those changes into your life. One of the examples, right? Less time on technology, more time in nature. Or less time on technology, more time for hobbies and things you're passionate about, trying new things, whatever. I find that's a double whammy, right? I want to spend less time on technology. I want to spend more time in nature. Well, there just went a chunk of time that we're gaining back because we're gonna spend less time on technology, that we can then use that chunk of time to spend more time in nature. I've talked about this to a few people, and I think that it's really there's something to be said about it. Again, if you struggle with time usage, right? I talk about this all the time in all of our episodes, so if you listen, you know. Time is our most important thing, we never get it back. If you struggle with time usage, time management, if you know, again with technology, right? If you see that you spend 2, 3 hours of the day on Instagram or something like that, schedule your day accordingly. One of the great things that I used until I got my time management and time usage under control was a daily schedule that broke down the day into hours. And from there, I was able to schedule everything I needed to do and see and visually see where the free time was, and then be able to plan accordingly. This time I'm going to spend for reflection. This time I'm going to spend for my hobby. This time I'm going to spend with friends. And I could really break it down like that. And doing that, whether you're consider yourself a planner or spontaneous, that is real medicine. I talked about this in an episode, and I made an analogy to my eating disorder when I was in recovery, and how when I was in recovery, it was all about planning all of my meals because that structure is medicine. Until we are able to do things off the cuff, you know, spontaneously, and use our time accordingly, whatever. Structure is medicine, and it helps us create discipline, and discipline is really important in this. Also, there's a great book called Atomic Habits, link is in the show notes, that can help you understand a little more about building habits in an effective and manageable way, kind of like I talked about, replacing a negative habit with a positive habit, habit stacking, all these different things. Then it's just trial and error, consistency, patience, accountability. Like I said, we're all just figuring it out as it goes, man. Like, cut yourself some slack when you need to, be disciplined when you need to. One of my favorite quotes: life is like a harp string. If it's strung too tight, it won't play. If it's strung too loose, it hangs. The tension that produces the beautiful sounds lies in the middle. Buddha said that. If you're being too tight with yourself, the harp of your life, so to speak, can't play. If you're being too loose with yourself, it hangs, it droops. So we have to find that tension between always being gentle with ourselves and establishing and maintaining discipline to create a beautiful sound, to create what we're trying to achieve here in any situation, really. So give yourself the space and time to do this. Go within, make the changes. And like I said earlier, try not to jump back into life is normal before the pandemic. That's how I've been thinking about it. It definitely depends, I think, on what your pandemic experience is, you know, whether you moved during the pandemic, whether you went to live with family or remained where you were. I think there's multiple elements at play, and that's why it's important to reflect on your own situation and what is, you know, have that awareness about what was your experience during the pandemic? What was your experience pre-pandemic? Where are the differences? What are you trying to create as you come out of this? And, you know, I just think that the mentality, right, of getting back to normal, again, like I said, at least for me, and I think on a society level, right, back to normal does not mean back to good. Because if we're always evolving and things can always evolve, then the past is not going to be better than the present or better than the future, depending on our effort and actions. So I know that it's tempting to just dive right back into life as normal before the pandemic. Trust me. It's so easy for us to fall back into old habits and the old way of doing things. For example, after my abusive relationship in high school, which again, my traumatic experience that was so life altering, so ground shaking, that it opened me up to all of the opportunity for healing and growth that I needed and could ever dream of, like we talked about earlier. After that, I was in therapy and I was working on stuff, but I was still dating. I hadn't done the work or gained enough awareness to show up differently in my dating experiences in that area of my life. So in that sense, I resorted back to because there was no alternative there. There was none of that like we've been talking about, the reflection, going within, making those changes. In that sense, I resorted back to my previous mindset, all the subconscious beliefs, all the behaviors, everything that I had carried into that relationship that had gotten me and continued to get me hurt in the first place, plus all the hurt and pain on top of that resulted from that relationship. It wasn't until the pandemic that I was able to have such a healthy pause on that part of my life where I had zero distractions, was talking to no one, interested in no one, not giving energy at all in that dimension of my life, that I could really reflect on all of my dating experiences, behaviors, beliefs, conditioning, etc., enough to notice and understand how much all of that was impacting my life and my relationships. Moving forward, right, allowing and embodying these changes and this insight as a result of the pandemic, I've gained such clarity on this subject in my life, past and present, that my relationships that my relationships, I'm just this excited about it that I'm stumbling over my words, that my relationships will never return to how they were before. And I'm so grateful for that. And I will work to keep it that way. Because again, in that sense, and I think, right, I'm talking about something that maybe not everyone can relate to, but I hope is a good example. In that sense, right, I think maybe anyone can relate to this sentiment that I also picked up in the pandemic, again, on the perspective of life is short and fragile and a beautiful opportunity, and I want to make the most of it. I will not spend time with anyone that is not worth that time, right? And again, not egotistical, not mean, but just simply from that awareness of like, there is something off here. And it doesn't matter what the excuse is that I'm going to hang out with this person. Maybe there's physical attraction. Maybe I'm just lonely and I just want someone to talk to. Maybe I want attention from someone that thinks I'm attractive or interesting, whatever. I will not be doing that because I want to carry this perspective with me, which is that time is the only thing we don't get back. I want to use my time in the direction, in the vision of my life that I want and nothing else. And I'm going to do everything in my power to maintain that perspective, to hold myself accountable to that for myself. And again, for you, it might not be romantic relationships. Maybe it's friendships. Maybe you really struggle with having boundaries with friends and having good friends, genuine friends. Don't hang out with them. Don't spend time with people that don't align with you. Spending time alone is so much better and can be so much better and can be so conducive to this healing and evolution that we talked about. And it will be work, right? Because for me, there will be certain times when certain things that might have happened in my past or I might have accepted in my past will show up in a different form from a different person. And maybe those old habits, behaviors, or reactions will want to, will try to occur as a reaction. But through my awareness and my clarity, I will give myself the space and time to see things again clearly, not bend my perspective, be unwavering in what I envision for myself and for my life, and respond accordingly. It's the same thing here with the pandemic. If I had taken a pause in high school, again, going on this example, if I had taken a pause in high school after that relationship long enough to do the deep healing that was required, it could have been avoided. A lot a lot of suffering could have been avoided, and suffering I caused others. At the same time, I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, because if it wasn't for those experiences after that relationship, I might not have recognized all that I needed to recognize in different aspects like I did in the pandemic. So that's to say, it's all a process. We all accumulate experiences that cause us suffering. And sometimes, especially as children and teenagers and even adults, because of how we were as children and teenagers, we don't know how to process certain experiences in the most productive and healthy way. We do what we can with what we have to stay alive and functioning. Undoing all of those accumulated experiences to heal and shift our lives, mind, body, and soul, takes time. It takes time and effort and awareness to make these changes, but it's 100% possible and 100% a part of the path of evolving as a person. And then that evolution, that healing, that shift, those changes our lives completely, because otherwise we continue to perpetuate the same behaviors, beliefs, conditionings, etc., that keep us stuck in the same relationships, beliefs, whatever it is, just with different people, just with different jobs, just with different places to live, just with, whatever it is. And that's why, in my opinion, it's incredibly important and of value to do if you want to change your life and live your life in your authentic image freely. And this is where meaning comes in. I'm fortunate enough to have not lost loved ones to COVID or experienced any traumatic alteration in my life. So my experience during the pandemic might differ greatly from yours. So again, I'll speak from the traumatic experience of the abusive relationship in high school. How I make meaning and how I made meaning out of that experience, which was so difficult and caused so much suffering, not only for me, but also for those I love, is that I believe it had to happen, or it happened for a reason, or that I'm grateful that it happened. And in that sense, I accept it to the point that it could be no other way. If that relationship never happened, maybe I would have married an abusive partner, had children with them, and that would have been much more difficult to untangle and walk away from. If that relationship never happened, maybe I would have never gotten therapy and been able to do the healing I have done with things that required healing long before that relationship. If that relationship never happened, I would not be who I am today. And who I am today is someone I love and am grateful to be. I would not have it any other way. So I accept it as part of my journey. And I'm grateful that it is part of my journey because it gives me such a perspective. And I made something of it. That is making meaning out of it and finding more meaning in my life afterwards. It doesn't mean it was easy. It doesn't mean the road to here, to the point I'm at today, was straight and smooth. It doesn't mean it wasn't painful. It simply means I made beauty from pain, and that's how we make meaning in life. Because life is suffering. It's the first noble truth in Buddhism. The cause of suffering is desire, second noble truth. For example, I wish COVID never happened. I wanted to be with this person, but they don't want to be with me. The way to stop suffering is to stop desire, to end attachment to desire. Third noble truth. For example, I love fashion. If you listen to the podcast, we've been over this. In the past, I've spent money out of the desire on fashion that kept me in a loop of attachment to materialism. During COVID, that whole aspect of self-expression shifted, right? Because I wasn't getting dressed every day. And because of the alteration in experience, I was grateful for the clothes I have, for my closet as it is, for my wardrobe as it is. I was grateful for what I had as all I needed, and I truly felt that way. And I could see through my own bullshit, right? And I could put my budgeting, my spending in priority, which I had never truly been able to do with clarity. And so I ceased desire for more material items, or I gained control over any desire for those material items. And in that sense, perhaps I had done something right on the Eightfold Path, which is the fourth noble truth. To follow the Eightfold Path is to end desire. The Eightfold Path is right view, as in know the truth, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness. I tell you these trivial examples so as to break down a large philosophical concept into small daily actions, again, through trivial examples. Where I'm going with this in my personal interpretation and in this context simply means be aware of your suffering, be aware of how you are causing your suffering, i.e., again, right, desire. Again, I'll use the example. If I desire someone and I want them to desire me back, but they don't, I continue to cause myself suffering by wishing things to be the way I want them to be instead of the way they are. Whereas if I saw things clearly, accepted what it is, I could end my desire that way, or I could make peace with my desire that way. You know, figure out what you can do to eliminate your suffering and the suffering of others through your knowledge, intention, what you say, how you act, how you live, your effort, your focus, and conscious awareness in the present moment, supported by establishing a meditation practice as a way to strengthen all of those other things. Again, start with reflection, start with your mind. If you want help with this, again, sign up for the waitlist, link in the show notes. All of this is to support you in living freely, living authentically, letting the pandemic change your life for the better, and making those changes accordingly. If you're interested in learning more about the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path, Google it. Strongly encourage it. If you find inspiration from this and want to hold on to this feeling, right? Making these changes, being excited about this topic, all this stuff, or conversely, if you feel overwhelmed by it, make a vision board. I'm going to be making a new one for my life in light of this conversation. You know, it's that time of the year. We've talked about vision boards before on As It Goes, how to make them, why they're important. The link to that episode is in the show notes. 10 out of 10 recommend listening to that if you're curious, and 12 out of 10 recommend doing this. Vision boards are a great way to stay aligned and hold yourself accountable with the authentic direction, with your authentic direction, regardless of the ups, downs, in-betweens, or external influences and distractions. And again, just to demonstrate how our direction in life is not fixed, but rather evolves with us when we evolve and as we evolve, is that I make a new vision board every year. Things on it change as my goals change and my vision and values shift or alter as I enter different chapters in my life, as I welcome new things into my life, as I open up to new things, as I realize there's certain things I want to focus more on. I love them. They're so much fun to make. They're incredibly powerful. You'll see. I challenge you to make one. That's the challenge for this episode. Just like we do challenges on our daily dose on Instagram, the challenge for this episode is to make a vision board. Do the reflection like we talked about, answer those questions, la la la. Write down the vision for your life and then take it a step further by making a collage, digital or physical, and placing it somewhere you see multiple times a day as the wallpaper on your phone, computer, your devices, hanging it in your bedroom, however, wherever. I hope you enjoyed this perspective and conversation. I hope it was helpful and an empowering reminder to you, as it was to me. Thank you for hanging out and listening. Thank you for giving yourself this time to feed your soul. As always, follow us on Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, whatever floats your boat. Keep your eye out for that 24-hour mindset workshop offer. Sign up for our waitlist, link in the show notes so you don't miss out. And go forth and do great things. I know you can, and you will. You got this. And have a beautiful week. Bye, everybody.